April Pitzer disappeared on Monday, June 28, 2004. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. April Pitzer's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to her. A former model and mother of two plans a homecoming after 6 months in the Mojave Desert.
She had real high hopes and she was so excited.
She wanted to go see her kids. It was time for her to leave.
But she never makes it home.
I said, something has happened to April. April's gone. They've done something with her.
A harrowing tale begins to unfold.
A person made the comment that I know where she's at. She's in a hole.
If somebody gets rid of somebody out here in the desert, it's rare they're ever found.
It's a windy, unforgiving evening in the Mojave Desert in May 2004. 30-year-old April Beth Pitzer aimlessly wanders along old Route 66 in Newberry Springs, California. The young mother of two from Texas, who once aspired to be a model, is now homeless, hungry, and defeated. She wonders how life has come to this. Just 4 years earlier in Fort Worth, Texas, April Pitzer was living the life that dreams are made of.
Chase loved April. He loved her very much, and she loved him. April's father-in-law bought him a beautiful new home, and I mean, they had it all.
Married to Chase Pitzer and about to give birth to their first little girl, April's life is heading in the right direction. Then comes a knock on her door that changes everything.
The DEA showed up at her residence in Fort Worth and told her she was coming back to Arkansas to be a federal witness.
When April was 22 and living in Arkansas, she was arrested for driving while intoxicated. She agreed to become a drug informant rather than face DWI charges. Now, 6 years later, she is called upon to testify. With the help of April's testimony, dozens of convictions are made against major players in a methamphetamine drug ring.
And she was never the same. She looked over her shoulder everywhere she went. Then she had Bradley.
The birth of her second daughter brings April renewed happiness. But before long, the paranoia begins again.
She wouldn't even let her girls sleep in their rooms because she was scared somebody was going to come through the windows and kill them. And all of this paranoia started really taking its toll on her marriage itself.
To subdue her fears, April starts drinking and doing drugs.
Her and Chase had grown very distant. It's hard on me to understand all this fear, this paranoia, people going to kill her. But I was her mom, and I couldn't give up on her.
April has a breakdown and is diagnosed as being bipolar.
April just crumpled, you know? They'd put her on this medication, that medication. She was so beautiful, and then she just started getting thin, and it was just so sad.
With her marriage all but over, April takes her two girls and moves into an apartment.
She took a job at this little shamrock up the road from where she and Chase lived. The girls had never been away from her. She was hands-on mom all the time.
Just when she thinks life can't get any worse, April's in-laws gain custody of her children.
She went home one day to get some more stuff, and the children were taken from her because she was bipolar. They thought she needed a break.
Separated from her children, April starts socializing with a different crowd.
I met April back sometime in Texas. I was at a friend's house and having a little social gathering.
John Lopez is a truck driver from California who has been staying in Texas with relatives. When John and April meet, the two seem to hit it off.
They decided to go out just to, mingle and have a few drinks and have a good time.
He paid April the attention that she felt she wasn't getting. John came into her life at a time when she needed to feel loved.
Just a few months later, John starts making plans to leave Texas and go back west.
I asked her if she wanted to come out to California and have a different view of the world, And she decided to come out with me.
April's thinking was, well, distance makes the heart grow fonder. And if I put distance between me and Chase and my mother-in-law and father-in-law, they'll realize that they need me to take care of these babies.
It's December 2003, and April Pitzer leaves Texas temporarily to clear her head.
And everything was going to be fine, and she's going to have her little girls back and her husband, her beautiful home, and her beautiful life. It didn't end up like that at all.
The Mojave Desert is at once enticing and dangerous. Home to the mines of the California Gold Rush, explorers and travelers alike have gravitated to the desert for decades in the hopes of realizing dreams at any cost. But once there, April realizes opportunities for an outsider are scarce.
There's a lot of really good people who lived out here their entire lives, but for those people who are moving out here trying to get away from the city, there's not a whole lot of work out here.
With so much space and little opportunity for legitimate employment, the desert can be a playground for criminal activity.
Barstow, California is known for methamphetamine capital of the world, so they say. I would say yes, there's some drugs that are floating around in the area. I try to warn her that there's certain places that you can go to that are okay, and then there's other places that you have to watch what you're doing out there.
As it turns out, April is drawn to the very crowd John warns her about. One night, at a party in the desert outside of Barstow, April meets a man who will change the course of her life. There's an instant and intense attraction.
This person on the dirt bike said, I've got 20 acres, we've got some trailer homes, and you can come home with me, and you'll have a place to live.
With a new man on the scene, April and John's relationship goes sour. Despite his warnings, April moves to a desert community about 20 miles east of Barstow. The world April is about to enter is a far cry from the life she's left behind.
They didn't even have electricity in that house where she was at. I didn't know.
Coming up, when April Pitzer hits rock bottom, she reaches out for help. But is it too late? When April Pitzer's marriage fails and she loses custody of her children, she leaves Texas and takes a trip out to the California desert to regroup. But a few months after her arrival, April is introduced to an underworld of drug dealers and addicts. Steve Wilkinson remembers when April arrived outside of Barstow in late January 2004.
The house I lived up in was right up on the road, and she was staying back there with her boyfriend.
A lot of people with criminal records living out there.
Her boyfriend and his brother had been arrested quite a bit. I've been arrested a few times for drug cases, so there was a lot of activity.
As a loving mother of two from out of town, April stands out among her new group of friends.
She had that southern accent, a little different, not the normal for out here.
Three months go by, and April's situation is getting increasingly precarious. When she and her new boyfriend break up, April has nowhere to go. With no job and no money, April lives day to day, never knowing where she will eat or who will offer her a bed for the night. She has been lying to her mother, Gloria Denton, about her life out in California.
I didn't know April was homeless and living from place to place. I thought that she had a job and everything was okay.
But life is far from okay for April Pitzer. The desert is an ocean separating her from her children. She is depressed and doesn't know where to turn.
She started walking down National Trails Highway.
A man in a truck passes by and sees April in distress. He pulls over and asks if she needs help.
And she just lost it, started crying, and told him her troubles, and he said, "I'm taking you home to my mama."
April accepts the kind gesture and goes with the man to meet his sick, elderly mother, Barbara Killebrew. They become friends instantly. Both are lonely and seeking companionship.
April was a caregiver. That's all she ever did, you know? I mean, she took care of people.
Taking care of Barbara reminds April of the life she left behind, one she desperately wants to get back to.
Barbara told her, "Your mama needs to know the truth." And April called me, and it was the hardest phone call I ever took.
April tells her mother about the dark road she has traveled.
I was shocked. And she said, "Mama, I just didn't want you to worry." She said, "I was just so ashamed, you know?"
April also says she wants to come home. It's early June 2004, and Gloria Denton immediately starts making plans for her daughter April's return to her hometown in the hills of Clarksville, Arkansas. But April isn't quite ready.
Her mom seemed to think that she wanted to come home. She was ready to. She just hadn't made that commitment that she was going to do it.
While days are spent with Barbara, April still needs a place to stay at night. Unfortunately, Barbara doesn't have an extra bedroom for her at the house. For shelter, she must rely on the kindness of other friends in Newberry Springs.
She'd been staying at my house maybe a couple of weeks or something like that. But she wanted to go see her kids, and that was a good thing for her to go do. You know, it was time for her to leave.
But according to Gloria Denton, her daughter stopped staying at Steve's house not because the timing is right, but because she is scared.
She called me and told me that she ran into this person out there.
In a strange twist of fate, the past has finally caught up with April Pitzer.
She met a girl out here, and it found out that she knew who she was from back east, because I guess April was a federal informant back there, and it was on that case that this girl's husband went to prison.
There was the girl and her husband that she testified against in the state of Arkansas 7 years later. How's that happen?
According to Steve, when April realizes who this woman is, she overreacts, calling too much attention to her past as a drug informant. After all, many of her new friends have made their careers off the drug trade.
She kept wanting to apologize and say how sorry she was, but the girl didn't want nothing to do with her. Just leave me alone. Go away, it's over.
All the years of fear and paranoia are finally substantiated.
I said, "Oh my God, April, you gotta get out of there." I said, "You're gonna die."
Steve Wilkinson was in federal prison on drug charges at the time of those convictions. He remembers the case that April testified in that broke up a major drug ring.
32 people went to federal prison over it. There was chemicals being bought back east, brought out to California for the manufacture of methamphetamine. There were a lot of drugs being sold back there from out here. A lot of people got caught up in it.
Steve is baffled that the woman whose testimony helped make the convictions ends up in his home in California.
That's just like the needle in the haystack. How she could ever land in a place like this and end up in the circle of the people that were involved in that case was real strange.
Gloria wants to wire April money for a bus ticket immediately, but April tells her to wait.
I was moving from Texas to Clarksville during that time. She said, "Mama, when you bring all your stuff back from Texas, I'll come to Arkansas, and that way I can help you unpack." I said, "Okay."
In the meantime, she persuades April to go somewhere safe.
I said, April, is there somebody that you trust where you can stay? And she said, Uncle Chuck.
Chuck Hollister is a quiet, middle-aged man, well known for taking in people who are down on their luck. Over the last few months, April had occasionally stayed at his house off Old Route 66 in Newberry Springs.
She said he's got a nice house and everything, and he's got reliable transportation, and I can go there. I said, okay.
I took her out on Wednesday and dropped her off in Newberry Springs at Chuck's house.
April is just days away from returning to her mother and a place where she will finally feel safe.
She had real high hopes, and she was so excited, you know, oh, Mama, I'm coming home, I'm coming home.
But 1 week later, when Gloria tries to reach her daughter in Newberry Springs, April is nowhere to be found.
I started calling Chuck, because that was the only number I had. When it rang, it rang, it rang, rang, rang. Never could get him, never could get him.
Coming up, police track down a witness who thinks she knows what happened to April. What they learn is chilling. Just when April Pitzer comes clean and asks her mother for help to get back home, a chance encounter from the past causes her to fear for her life. Now, instead of planning a homecoming celebration, April's mother, Gloria, is desperately trying to locate her daughter's whereabouts. And the man April has been staying with, Chuck Hollister, has not been answering his phone.
Tried to call her. Couldn't get her, couldn't get her, couldn't get her. And on July the 4th, I finally got a call.
April's friend, Barbara Killebrew, had been in the hospital. One of the first things she does when she gets home is phone Gloria to check on April.
Barbara called me and she's like, how's it feel to have your baby back? I said, Barbara, April's not home.
As she hears those words, Gloria begins to fear the worst.
I said, Barbara, something's happened to April. Who was the last person with her? And she said, Chuck Hollister. He brought her out here to get her stuff.
He had taken her to several friends' house. He took her to Barbara's house. She was telling everybody goodbye. She had packed her stuff, and her stuff was ready to go.
It's been 8 days since April was last seen. Gloria is frantic and tries to file a missing persons report.
I called San Bernardino County. They wouldn't let me report her missing. They said she just had a bad marriage, lost her kids. April's not missing, she just doesn't want to be found. And I'm like, you don't know my daughter.
Gloria and April have a special bond as mother and daughter.
Everybody thought we were sisters, you know. She was my friend, she was my daughter, she was my everything.
When April was just 3, Gloria Denton lost custody of her 2 children to relatives.
I was 19 years old, and they thought I was too young to be a mother.
For the next 15 years, Gloria fought relentlessly to get her children back. Refusing to lose touch, Gloria and April maintained a close relationship over the years.
Her cards, they tell the story. She loved me very much, and I loved her.
When April is 17, she finally moves home to be with her mother.
We were inseparable, absolutely inseparable. And April said it so well. She's like, Mama, now we have forever, and nobody can ever separate us again.
Now, in June 2004, Gloria fears she's losing April once again. Days pass, and still no sign of her daughter, and no word from Chuck Hollister.
On July the 16th, I said, Barbara, you've got to make a report. Something has happened to April. April's gone. I said, they've done something with her.
This time, police take the report. Then, just 3 days later, Gloria finally gets the call she has been anxiously awaiting. It's from Chuck Hollister.
And finally, he called me back. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry that I've not been in touch with you. He goes, I've been moving a friend to Oregon. And I said, Chuck, where's April?
Monday morning, he got up to go to work. April was still there. He came home, and April was gone, and he hadn't seen her since. He thought somebody gave her a ride to a bus stop, and she had gone home.
Chuck tells Gloria about April's state of mind the Sunday night before she goes missing.
She had the pictures of her girls out on the counter, and she was crying. She held their pictures up to her heart and said, I'm going home, I'm going home.
But what Chuck tells Gloria next is very disturbing.
Chuck said that a couple of her bags were still there on the property.
Oh, it's all here. He said, there's her little white suitcase, there's her backpack.
Why would April have left all her belongings behind if she was en route to Arkansas? When a month passes and there's still no word from April, investigators begin to search the area.
Missing person flyers were made up and posted throughout Barstow, Daggett, Yermo, Newberry Springs.
The strategy works. On September 9th, 2004, a Barstow City transportation employee alerts police to a comment from a bus rider.
A person getting on a local transit bus, seeing a flyer at the bus station, made mention that she knew that person, knew April, and made the comment that, I know where she's at, she's in a hole.
It's an ominous, disturbing clue. Police track down the witness for further questioning.
She denied saying that she was in a hole, but she did tell me that she was at a party, and somebody at the party, she couldn't remember who, said that April was dead and in a mine shaft.
Detectives have a lead at last. But the fact that there are over 20,000 mines in San Bernardino County alone is daunting. Deputy Coroner and Missing Persons Coordinator David Van Norman is all too familiar with the area in question.
The desert is vast, and it really doesn't help to say that somebody might have been placed into a mine in light of the fact that there are literally thousands and thousands of mines.
We're between Nevada State Line, the major freeway, into Vegas off the 15 freeway. We're not that far from LA.
If somebody gets rid of somebody out here in the desert, it's rare they're ever found.
We seem to be a dumping ground sometimes.
But it's not just the witness's testimony that leads investigators to believe April has been killed and buried in the desert. That same week, in early September, another piece of evidence comes to light, this time from a truck stop 800 miles away in a neighboring state.
A note was written up in Oregon at a truck stop, men's bathroom wall. It said, looking for missing girl from Arkansas, 3 miles east of Barstow, I-15 freeway. From Barstow to the Calico exit, ground search was conducted. And again, that's an area where there's hundreds of mine shafts. We had nothing more to go on than that.
Meanwhile, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department obtains surveillance video at the truck stop that captures everyone going into and coming out of the men's bathroom.
It's 24-hour live video, and we have it from June all the way through to the day it was found in September.
In the end, neither the ground searches nor the surveillance video provides any further insight into April's case.
No evidence was found. That doesn't mean that the rumor isn't true.
Coming up, could cryptic notes etched in an old miner's shack hold the answers to April's disappearance? It's mid-September, and the search for April Beth Pitzer is heating up. But everyone fears the worst. First, a witness overhears that April's body is in a desert mine, and then a message found in a truck stop bathroom reveals the missing woman from Arkansas is close to Barstow, California, off the I-15. Police and April's mother in Arkansas have begun tracking people down who knew April, desperate for any clues that can explain her disappearance on June 28th.
April didn't have a phone of her own. Wherever she went, she'd call me collect. I started calling all the phone numbers back, and one person would tell me a little more and a little more and a little more.
Gloria wanted to believe her daughter is still alive, but that hope is fading. She hears many theories about where her daughter's body is, but there is one location that keeps coming up: the mines of Ludlow. It turns out that Chuck Hollister, the last person known to have seen April alive, has a close friend named Dan, who claims to own a mine out in Ludlow called the Red Dog Mine.
Chuck and him mine, they made jewelry and stuff.
Dan and Chuck are known rockhounds. They spend a lot of their time together working the Red Dog Mine, about 30 miles east of Barstow.
Dan thought he was going to get rich. The town of Ludlow was part of the Mother Lode during the California Gold Rush.
This was an old mining area back in the late 1800s. There were some old shacks out there that he'd write his name on, claimed that the shacks were his.
Dan often stays out at the Red Dog Mine for days on end. He's a hermit who likes to keep to himself.
He's got a sign on the front, well, handwritten. It says, "If you can read this, then you need to go have a nice day someplace else. Dan."
Dan had started working in this mine back in the 70s. At the very bottom of it, which is about 200 feet deep, he had wrote Dan 1979.
Dan had been around a long time. When he was younger, he was one of the guys that, and you wouldn't want to cross.
The connection between the rumor that April's body might be found deep in a Ludlow mine and the fact that Dan worked the Red Dog Mine in Ludlow is enough for police to investigate further. First, they try to question Dan.
I went by his house numerous occasions. His vehicle would be there. I'd knock on the door, he wouldn't answer. I would leave my business card. I left missing person flyers asking him to contact me.
Eventually, Dan does talk to the police, but says he knows nothing about April Pitzer's whereabouts. Without gaining any valuable information from Dan, investigators decide to go out to Ludlow and search the area. They begin at the dilapidated mining shacks Dan is rumored to have occupied, and are shocked at what they find.
There was some writing, strange writing on the walls inside. Things about him being a sniper in Vietnam, things about trespassing on his property.
What investigators tell Gloria is bone-chilling.
One of the sayings were, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 are dead. Another one was, if you want to disappear, I can help you. It'll bug me forever because I might have sent her to her doom.
If Dan did actually write these things, was he referring to April's disappearance? Perhaps the Red Dog Mine itself will hold the answers.
The Barstow Search and Rescue Team went out there. They also eventually took cadaver dogs out there, and they searched the mine from top to bottom.
But after 2 days with the cadaver dogs, police are confident April's body is not hidden there. There are no clues to indicate April had ever been to the mines. Could all this talk about Dan and the Red Dog Mine be just desert folklore?
Dan continued denying any knowledge of anything about April. He knew her. He didn't know what happened to her. He claimed he didn't do any harm to her.
The search for April is at a standstill. Then, a new and disturbing clue surfaces. In January of 2005, a woman recognizes April from a missing persons poster and realizes this was the same woman who worked for her in June of 2004, likely the same time she was staying with Chuck Hollister. Andre Pruitt, owner of the famous Baghdad Cafe in Newberry Springs, remembers well the day April came into the restaurant.
April came in and asked me for a job, said she needed to have something to do. She said she lived over on one of those dirt roads back there.
Chuck Hollister's house on Caspian Road is just a few blocks from the restaurant.
And I said, well, we're really not very busy, but I can let you work a few days a week. And she came back the next day.
On the first day of her job as a waitress, April's appearance makes a lasting impression on Andre.
She looked very nice. She had her hair up. She had on a white blouse and a black skirt, like she was really going to work somewhere. Nice.
At first, April seemed like a good fit at the Baghdad Cafe.
She was very sweet and nice to the customers. I said, well, you know, she'll work out.
Then, on the second day of her new job, what Andre believes to be the days leading up to April's disappearance, she could tell things were not right. April looked like she had been beaten.
She looked like somebody hit her in her eye because it was blue. I don't know who she was really involved with, but I knew that she was upset the day that I talked to her. I knew she needed to get out of here for whatever the reason. She looked really confused and maybe a little scared.
The mystery remains. Who was April scared of, and why? This was the same time period when April planned on returning home. Could this be the day she went missing?
And then that was the last day that I saw her. She didn't come back.
Coming up, on his deathbed, Dan leaves one last cryptic message in the search for April. Will it lead investigators to her remains? Six months after April Pitzer is last seen in Newberry Springs, California, her mother and police have tried to piece together what might have happened to her. Following two disturbing leads, investigators search the Red Dog mine for her body. When the deputy coroner learns of April's case and hears the rumor that she could be hidden in a mine, he calls a friend for help.
I assisted by making contact with a local desert lore historian.
He knows that desert like the palm of his hand, and he had been called to keep his eyes out for April.
Finally, a year and a half after April went missing, there's a break in the case. In late December of 2005, while leading a tour group through the old mines of Ludlow, the historian stumbles upon what will prove to be vital evidence.
He went in one of the old abandoned shacks and he seen women's clothing and he said, stop. He said, we gotta leave here.
Hoping to be able to identify the clothes as April's, Gloria is on the first plane out to San Bernardino County in California. This is the first time Gloria Denton will confront the people and places associated with her missing daughter.
I just dropped to my knees when I got out there and I seen it. Just vast sand, hills, desert, shacks.
Gloria remembers how April described the desert in one of their last conversations.
She said, Mom, it's a dog-eat-dog world out here. You do what you can to survive. And when I got out there, I knew what she meant.
The next morning, Gloria accompanies the search team to the area where the clothes were found. They head out to a mine called the Indian Queen, several miles beyond the Red Dog mine, which police searched 1 year ago. When they arrive, April's mother ventures out to scan the premises for any signs of her daughter. It doesn't take her long.
The first thing I seen was a red and black flannel shirt that I seen her.
Gloria sadly remembers the night April called her, asking for help.
She didn't have any clothes, she didn't have anything. She said, Mom, it's cold out here. You know, can you send me a coat, something flannel? So I fixed her up a couple boxes of clothes.
April told her mother how touched she had been to receive the care package.
She held them up to her and smelled them, and that she went in the bedroom and closed the door and just cried and cried. because she could smell me and she knew where they came from.
After a thorough search, investigators feel confident April is not at the Indian Queen. But April's mother does not want to give up. Although the Red Dog Mine was searched by police 1 year ago, Gloria wants to see it for herself. She asks the coroner, David Van Norman, to take her there. She shudders at what she finds.
When I pulled up, the first thing that I seen was the white suitcase that Barbara Killebrew gave April. It was just a flapping in the wind.
This is the same suitcase Chuck claimed April left behind at his house. It was not here when police searched the Red Dog Mine in December of 2005. Now, 1 year later, April's clothes are scattered between the Indian Queen and Red Dog Mines. The question persists. How and why did these items get from Chuck's house in Newberry Springs to the mines of Ludlow, 30 miles away?
I don't know how the clothing that Gloria says was her daughter's ended up in the desert, if it was the same clothes that was at Chuck's house.
Police and Gloria may never know the truth. Chuck Hollister is very sick with cancer. Detective Steve Pennington interrogates him one last time.
I asked him, if he had done this, if it was something that he wanted to clear his conscience, and he flat out denied any involvement in her disappearance.
As for the clothes that were found in the desert, they failed to provide any forensic value.
The hot of the desert sun and sometimes the cold of a desert winter will destroy any evidence that could be analyzed from that.
Soon after, Chuck Hollister passes away. As time progresses, the case of April Pitzer gets increasingly complicated and enigmatic.
There's been so many rumors that have floated around out here. We don't want to hear any more rumors. We want to know what somebody actually knows.
At first, I was real hopeful, and you get people telling you all these different things. I finally threw my hands up, and I'm like, look, April didn't die that many times. She wasn't killed that many ways, and she can't be that many places.
Then, in 2009, when Gloria is out in California for yet another search, she hears through the grapevine that Dan, the man who might hold the clues to her daughter's disappearance, is sick and in the intensive care unit.
I'm like, oh my God, I've got to go see this man. He can't die. I could never rest if I'd been out here and I don't go talk to him.
With April's missing person picture on her t-shirt, Gloria Denton confronts the man she believes is somehow involved in her daughter's disappearance.
And he looked at me and I said, Dan, I'm Gloria. I'm April's mom. And I kept on waiting on that hate to come over me, and it just never came.
Dan and Gloria talk for over an hour. His kindness makes Gloria feel as though she has been wrong all along about his role in April's death.
I started crying, and he cried with me. And, he took my hand, and he said, April was a sweetheart, Gloria, and whoever killed that girl needs to be brought to justice.
Then, just days later, before dying, Dan confesses to friends that he knows more about April's disappearance than he let on.
Dan said when he was dying, that girl, April Pitzer, said her mom's in the right place. She's just not been far enough.
I believe.
Elizabeth and John Calvert disappeared on March 3rd, 2008. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. The Calverts' last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to them. A much-loved couple, Liz and John Calvert, owners of a yachting resort, living the good life.
They enjoyed being with family and friends and doing things that brought a richness to life.
But their business is in trouble.
She was starting to suspect that there might be some embezzlement going on.
They confront their former bookkeeper.
The former accountant, told Liz, I got it figured out. It's like a computer glitch. No worries.
The next day, when the couple's nowhere to be found, police question the accountant.
Well, he told us a lot that were later found to be lies.
Where are the Calverts? And what does this crime scene have to do with it?
There was 360 degrees of blood in that bathroom.
On Monday, March 3rd, 2008, the day they disappeared, Elizabeth and John Calvert meet with their former accountant at 6 p.m. The meeting is about the troubled finances of their yachting resort, called Harbor Town, located in picturesque Hilton Head Island, South Carolina.
We have all of the water-related sports here: kayaking, parasailing, tours and cruises, fishing.
They also had a rental property business that they rented out condominiums and apartments.
Until recently, business was going well. When the Calverts acquired Harbortown Yacht Basin in 2005, John, an engineer and boating enthusiast, cultivated a laid-back and friendly atmosphere.
John was in love with the Harbortown Yacht Basin and just loved the people and, trying to come up with ideas to make their experiences more fun. Liz was, behind him and kind of the practical side.
Liz helps John at Harbortown half the week. She also practices corporate law in nearby Savannah, Georgia.
She was a tax attorney, and she thrived in it. She liked understanding the nuances of the tax laws and very much detail-oriented, very much wanted to find out the resolution to a situation.
Liz plans to leave her law practice and work full-time managing Harbortown with John by spring of 2008. They'll keep their houses in Atlanta and Savannah, but live on their yacht docked at the marina.
I think they had life figured out. I think they enjoyed things together and enjoy each other.
At the end of 2007, Liz takes on some accounting duties as part of a gradual transition to her new role managing Harbortown, while John continues catering to the clientele.
I thought, what an amazing team they were going to make.
Until Liz's involvement, Harbortown's bookkeeping had always been handled by an outside company, a local management firm called the Club Group.
They were a hired management company to take care of the financial end. They actually wrote the checks. They were John and Liz's financial arm.
The Club Group's financial and accounting practice is run by 54-year-old Dennis Gerwin, a well-liked member of the Hilton Head community.
John and Dennis had been friends for years. We had worked with Dennis for 20 years.
Although Dennis had already been managing Harbortown's finances prior to the Calverts acquisition, Liz never felt completely comfortable with him.
Liz was never really one to let other people manage her money, but because the gentleman that was managing the books from her perspective was someone that had been involved with the business before they purchased it, and they had every reason to trust him.
But as Liz eases into her new role, she can't help but notice what seemed like careless accounting errors.
She was starting to go through the books and had uncovered some discrepancies that she couldn't quite explain. And knowing Liz, was going to spend whatever time she needed to try to get to the bottom of it.
They decide that all of Harbortown's accounting should be in-house and under Liz's control by December 31st.
They let the other firm go, at the end of 2007, and then she started in earnest, January 1 of 2008, being the accountant, if you will.
And at first she didn't have any real concerns, but, she just thought that there were some things that needed explanation.
John believes that whatever the problem, Dennis can shed light on the confusion easily enough. But Liz takes a more aggressive approach.
It was like there was Bills weren't getting paid. We couldn't get balance sheets. There were just, you would ask about something and you just couldn't get the answers that you were looking for. And it made Liz very nervous.
Liz is beginning to think that the bookkeeping discrepancies might involve missing monies.
She didn't go into a lot of detail about what she was finding, but she really wanted to get to the bottom of it before she started accusing people. It was just her nature to assume that there was a reasonable explanation.
She was going to approach it in a very logical, very professional way.
At some point, she came to a conclusion that she was going to talk to the accountant about that.
On Sunday afternoon, March 2nd, 2008, Liz has a quick meeting with Dennis Gerwig. He says there's a reasonable explanation for the accounting errors.
The former accountant, told Liz, I got it figured out. It's like a computer glitch. No worries. So why don't you bring John back tomorrow and have another meeting, and we'll just talk about it at that time. So she confronted him essentially by herself on that Sunday, but then was deferred to bring John back the next day to kind of hammer it all out.
The next afternoon, Monday, Liz is on her way from her office in Savannah to the next meeting she has with Dennis Gerwig at 6 p.m. As she drives, Liz calls her friend Terry McClure to have a quick chat. The topic turns to the potentially awkward meeting that Liz is about to attend with Dennis Gerwig.
And I remember kind of making a joke about her. I was like, you're going to do this in public, aren't you? And she's like, oh, yeah, there's no reason to be concerned.
While Liz and Terry talk, John Calvert is touching base with Harbor Master Nancy Kappelman before he goes off to the meeting with Gerwig.
Ended up talking to John about 4:30 on the phone, and we had planned to meet Tuesday morning.
Neither Nancy Kappelman nor Terry McClure know it, but these conversations would be the last they have with their close friends, Liz and John Calvert. The next morning of March 4th, Harbor Town is awash in sun and crisp spring air. Harbor Master Nancy Kappelman arrives at the marina to open for the day. She finds the lights inside the office are still turned on.
It's unusual, and I think it's odd, but then I think John and Liz must have worked late last night and just left the light on. And I walked in and I saw John's briefcase, which was another kind of odd thing because I'd never seen his briefcase before. And I continued on into my office, and there was the file with all the statements in it that Liz had said she and John were going to get out the night before, which was pretty unusual for them not to do something that they say they're going to do.
Nancy goes about her morning as usual until 10 o'clock passes without so much as a call from John Calvert. He also doesn't show up for the meeting they'd scheduled.
So I started calling him. It rang and went to their message. So I left a message, let me know when to expect you.
It appears that the Calvert cell phones are uncharacteristically turned off.
Oh, it's very unusual. They're very responsible, and they were very responsive. Could always count on them.
Nancy assumes something came up last minute for Liz and John, so she patiently waits. But as the day progresses, she becomes increasingly concerned.
We had a meeting at 4 o'clock scheduled. John would never miss that meeting. And so finally about 3:30, I just canceled the meeting.
Nancy sends an employee over to the yacht that the Calverts live aboard.
We went on the boat and went through the boat, and came back and told me that there was nobody on the boat.
They do find the Calverts' cat, PC, waiting to be fed. Also, Liz's car is parked in her usual space at the marina's lot, but John's Mercedes is nowhere to be found. Have the Calverts taken an impromptu trip? It isn't like them to leave without word. Nancy starts trying to track them down.
I knew that I had to do something. I had to figure something out. I called one of Liz's associates over the law firm in Savannah, to get Dave's contact information.
In Atlanta, Liz's brother, David White, is leaving work when he gets Nancy's call.
I remember it pretty vividly. It was Nancy saying, hey, you know, have you heard from John and Liz? You know, we're trying to track them down, or, you know, I didn't know where exactly they were, but I just felt like, you know, okay, no worries, you know, I'll give them a call and left voicemail messages.
Meanwhile, Nancy calls the Calverts' former accountant, Dennis Gerwing.
I asked if he had talked to John or Liz that day, and he said no. He hadn't seen them or talked to them. So I suggested that I call Chief of Security, which I did.
About 24 hours after the Calverts were last heard from, Nancy Kappelman files missing persons reports with the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office in South Carolina. In Atlanta, Georgia, David White does the same.
I met the police over at their house here in Atlanta, let them in, looked around, and they ruled that, you know, no one had been or disturbed the house.
Like most missing adult investigations, this one is initially routine.
There was a possibility from the beginning that John and Elizabeth Calvert decided they were going to leave town and not let anybody know. There's nothing wrong with that.
This explanation sounds reasonable to Nancy Kappelman, but there's still one thing that's gnawing at her.
I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't feel like it had anything to do with it, but finally, yeah, I told them that Liz had concerns that there was some financial improprieties and the accounting. That got their interest at that point.
Coming up, the Calverts' business turns out to be in deep financial trouble.
She just said that there was a substantial amount of money missing.
Liz and John Calvert, the owners of a resort in Hilton Head, South Carolina, haven't been seen or heard from for about 36 hours. Police quickly locate Liz's car and her small airplane, which they find parked in its space at Hilton Head's airport. But John's car is missing.
John had a Mercedes, and it wasn't in the parking lot on Tuesday. And Wednesday morning, I drove through all the parking lots looking to see if it was anywhere around. Couldn't find it.
The Calverts' friend and colleague, Nancy Kappelman, initially thinks there's a simple but troubling explanation.
My fear was that they had gone somewhere in the car and they had had an accident.
Back at the Calverts' business, Harbortown Yacht Basin, the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office begins to investigate.
We were about 26 hours behind. When we got the report on March 4th, it was close to 7 p.m., and the last time the Calverts had been seen were March 3rd, about 6 p.m.
Employees tell them it's possible the last person to see the Calverts is their former accountant, Dennis Gerwing. The Calverts met with him that Monday evening, March 3rd. The sheriff decides to send his investigators over the next day to have a chat with Mr. Gerwing. The next morning, investigators arrive at the club group to find Dennis Gerwing sitting in the same office where he apparently met with the Calverts 2 evenings earlier.
He seemed concerned. Was basically telling us that they met and they discussed some financial issues, and then they departed.
Gerwing doesn't tell detectives the exact nature of the financial issues, but he does say they stem from an earlier discussion he had with Liz Calvert about the company's financial records.
Liz was kind of put off by Dennis and told her that, you know, I'm not going to discuss this with you alone. I'm going to discuss it with you and John together. And that's when the March 3rd meeting happened.
By the time of Gerwing's questioning, investigators already know from other sources where Liz Calvert had been shortly before the 6 o'clock meeting on March 3rd. And Gerwing seems to corroborate it.
We know that she went to the Yellow Jacket, which was their home, so to speak, here on Hilton Head, She changed clothes and went to this meeting. John had already responded to the meeting. He was with Dennis.
Gerwing says that Liz arrived at about 6:15, 15 minutes late, but the meeting only went on for another 15 minutes.
Dennis Gerwing said that Liz just said, "John, come on, we gotta go," and they left. They never got to the point of discussing the issues at hand. Dennis says she didn't, express why they had to leave, and commented that saw them getting in the same car.
Gerwing says when he left for home 10 minutes later, John's Mercedes was gone, but he saw Liz's Mini still parked in his office lot, though he didn't think much of it.
He had assumed at that point that they may have left and gone to dinner.
But later, Liz's car somehow made it to its usual parking space back at Harbortown. After leaving work, Gerwing says he took the long way home, stopping at a gas station on the way.
He said he got gas, bought a lottery ticket, and proceeded into the gated community where he lives.
As Dennis explains his comings and goings, investigators can't help but notice a cut on his right hand.
There was a few-inch laceration in the web of his right hand. It was very suspicious. He indicated that he went home after the meeting with the Calverts, and in the process of opening a wine bottle, it broke and he cut his hand.
Gerwing tells cops he went back to work, stopping by a local pharmacy, a CVS near his office, to buy Band-Aids for his cut. He says he worked till around midnight, then went back home to bed. Dennis Gerwing has lived in Hilton Head for over 20 years, has a solid reputation as an accountant, and until being questioned, has never had any run-ins with police.
Dennis Gerwing was sociable, had a few close friends that owned local businesses, and was trusted with a lot of money. He was not on the law enforcement radar at all.
Gerwing continues to cooperate by giving police consent to search his office, home, and 2 vehicles. Investigators examine his Toyota Avalon and find nothing out of the ordinary. Then they inspect Gerwing's GMC Yukon, which has just come back from a repair shop. They immediately notice that it has been thoroughly vacuumed.
When that car was examined, one of the bench seats was missing from the car. He offered the explanation that he was moving furniture. Oh, no, there's no witnesses to indicate that at all.
Police are skeptical, but do not come away with anything conclusive.
We found no evidence linking the Calverts to either of Dennis Gerwing's vehicles.
Next, an evidence team turns its sights on Gerwing's office. Although it is remarkably clean, there are no obvious red flags. At Gerwing's home, another well-kept place, officers do spot something unusual. A small pile of sandy dirt on the kitchen floor, and a freshly soiled shovel leaning against the outside of the house.
Dennis Gerwing offered the explanation that he had been doing some repair work to his irrigation system outside. Well, there was no evidence of any digging or so. The investigators became suspicious that maybe this shovel and the dirt on the kitchen floor had something to do with the Calverts' disappearance. And when they checked the trash where he says he threw the wine bottle away, there was no broken bottle at all.
Adding to their suspicions is a search of Gerwing's phone records. It seems his cell phone was deactivated at around 7:30 p.m., shortly after he met with the Calverts, and powered off until 11:15 a.m. the next day, almost 16 hours later.
Why did he power off his cell phone? Did he know that we would use GPS to track his whereabouts? That were extremely obvious that something here is not right.
With so many suspicious inconsistencies, the sheriff decides within hours of the initial interview to quietly change Gerwing's status from a mere witness to a person of interest in the disappearance of Liz and John Calvert.
Investigators contacted him via phone and asked him to come back in for another interview the following day and to take a polygraph.
Gerwing asks if he's now being considered a suspect, but because police have no evidence linking him to any crime, they tell him no.
He was asked to come back for another interview just to get a few things straightened out in the statement.
Gerwing reluctantly agrees to cooperate. But that phone call would prove to be the last direct contact between him and the sheriff's office.
Dennis Gerwing retained counsel. Either that night or the next morning, the attorney called and said he wouldn't be in.
It's a huge blow to the sheriff's investigation. Although Gerwing's statements don't add up, investigators still have no evidence to implicate him in the Calverts' disappearance.
The last person known to have seen the Calverts has now clammed up and is not talking at all. So you can imagine what that did as far as the progress of the case.
Coming up, what comes next is an even bigger blow to friends and family.
I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen with the business. I wasn't real sure where to turn.
When I learned that they had found the car, you're like, all right, maybe there's some pieces here, there's some logic to it.
It's the morning of March 6th, 2008. A little over 2 days have passed since John and Elizabeth Calvert were last seen by their former accountant, Dennis Gerwing. At first, he agrees to help with the investigation, but then he hires a lawyer and cancels a polygraph exam.
And it really hurt or hindered our investigation because, again, the last person to see the Calverts made himself inaccessible to us.
Meanwhile, the Calverts' friends and family hold a tenuous vigil, hoping they will get some answers if police can find a silver Mercedes.
There was a car that was missing. John's car was, they didn't know where that was.
Although the Calverts have only been missing a short time, Liz's brother David White says their business, Harbortown, is already starting to founder.
They were the only ones that had the ability to financially move this business along. So all of a sudden, I was confronted with, what do we do with the business? We can't pay bills, we can't pay salary.
I was scared. I was scared. I didn't know what happened to them. I didn't know what was going to happen to us.
David jumps into the fray, hoping to keep Harbortown afloat while employees work overtime.
We were putting up posters. We were trying to talk to everyone we could think of to talk to.
Local news outlets search for the Calverts as well, plastering the affluent couple's image over front pages and TV screens. Savannah, Georgia TV reporter Holly Bounds has never seen such media interest.
Typically, an everyday news story, it'll be your 3 local TV stations and 2 newspapers, max. This one, we had all national television stations there, and I think that the sheriff's office was just an absolute overload.
We were getting calls, I saw a silver Mercedes, or I saw this, or I saw that, and we were tracking those leads down as they came in.
The Beaufort County Sheriff's Office is coordinating its largest search effort in recent history.
We utilized every resource that we had available to us. We utilized South Carolina Wildlife Department, South Carolina DNR, Department of Natural Resources. We had the FBI involved early on, and SLED, State Law Enforcement Division, including the local Hilton Head Island Fire Department for some man searches.
Late into the night of March 6th, these efforts finally pay off. While canvassing parking lots, deputies find John Calvert's silver Mercedes. It's parked at a hotel the Calverts never checked into, and it's 6 miles away from where it was last seen.
It appeared that someone had driven into the parking lot and found the first space available, got out of it and left. That vehicle had been taken there by a single occupant because there were coffee cups and other things that were on the passenger seat.
When I learned that they had found the car, you're like, all right, maybe there's some pieces here, there's some logic to it.
The forensics team, they process with chemicals, they look for fibers, hairs, anything that would put somebody in that car. And we found no evidence that would indicate any criminal activity linking Dennis Gerwing to that car. It was just a natural-looking car.
Without any blood, DNA or fingerprints that would indicate foul play, investigators are back to square one.
It didn't solve any mysteries. It actually created a mystery for us as how the car got there.
And the Calverts' loved ones can no longer hold out hope that the Mercedes was taken on a road trip. With more questions than answers, authorities redouble their efforts to check accountant Dennis Gerwing's movements after he met with the Calverts. What stands out immediately is Gerwing's claim that he visited a CVS drugstore after he cut his hand.
His explanation for the cut was that when he was opening a bottle of wine, it broke and it cut his hand. And then he went to the CVS to buy some Band-Aids.
The pharmacy's cash register and surveillance video show that Dennis Gerwing did in fact buy Band-Aids the night of March 3rd. Except it happened at 7:15 p.m., almost 3 hours earlier than he claimed.
Of course, he left out the fact that he went in, bought some Band-Aids, went back out to the parking lot, came back in and bought some latex gloves.
Gerwing had never mentioned any latex gloves during his statements to police, and investigators never found any in his cars, home, or office. Now it's becoming evident to police that Gerwing may be trying to hide something. But soon, investigators do find a clue that Gerwing couldn't possibly hide. Video surveillance from the front of a restaurant next to Gerwing's office the night the Calverts went missing.
It was apparent that Dennis Gerwing was pacing back and forth in the late evening, early morning hours of March 3rd and 4th.
Police dogs have already sniffed for signs of the Calverts at that spot, as well as other areas behind Gerwing's office building. Faced with no solid evidence to implicate Gerwing, investigators weigh their options.
I think when we got to the point where the purchase of the latex gloves was made, we had established enough probable cause to search for any evidence that would help us determine what led to the disappearance of the Calverts.
On March 8th, the sheriff's office executes search warrants, returning once again to Gerwing's home, office, and cars.
But instead of just doing a look around, we did a search for any forensic evidence. Nothing was found. Zilch.
Coming up, police can't pin anything on Gerwing, but soon, a promising new lead emerges.
The last phone call he made that night was to the only witness to the planning, Shah, his employee.
With mounting suspicion of foul play in the disappearance of Elizabeth and John Calvert, police turn up the heat, hoping to implicate the couple's former associate, Dennis Gerwing. But because he stopped cooperating, investigators turn to Gerwing's associates and friends for clues.
All the people that were associated with Dennis Gerwing were investigated, were talked to, were polygraphed. And there were so many different opinions of Dennis Gerwing that we discovered during the investigation.
Most never imagined Dennis Gerwing, of all people, could be involved in foul play. But some indicate that the lifelong bachelor was no Boy Scout either.
Some of his social habits were questionable. And he had some dealings with some extremely shady people that came out during the investigation.
Except for a gambling habit and frequent sightings at a local strip club, police don't learn anything new about Gerwing's activities before the Calverts went missing. But the next day, cops get the kind of information they've been waiting for. One week after the Calverts met with their former accountant, Captain Bob Bromage brings in a young woman named Shah, who is Dennis Gerwing's assistant, for questioning. She's the last person that Dennis Gerwing called on the evening the Calverts disappeared. According to phone records, Gerwing made that phone call after buying the Band-Aids and leaving the CVS pharmacy, and just before he went back in to purchase those latex gloves.
The last phone call Dennis Gerwing made on March 3rd was to Shah, his employee, the only witness to his planning that afternoon.
At the sheriff's office, Shaha tells investigators that a few hours before Gerwing called her, he asked that she follow him to the Hilton Head Airport so he could leave his Toyota Avalon there. While she followed him to the airport, Gerwing made a brief stop at his house.
She says he went in for a minute or two, came out with nothing.
Shaha says, afterward Gerwing then drove to the airport, dropped off his car, and then left with her.
His explanation to her was that he had friends coming into town.
On their way back to work, Shaha says Gerwing instructed her to stop at the Graco hardware store.
She said he went in and bought some tablecloths or something, so we went back to Graco and found the receipts for the purchase, found Dennis on video purchasing 3 very large industrial strength drop cloths.
Shaha asked what the cloths were for. Gerwing replied he was in the middle of a painting project.
Friends and close associates of Gerwing said he was not the kind of guy to do a lot of manual labor. He wouldn't be doing painting.
Shaha says later at the office, around 5:30 p.m., Gerwing asked her to go to Harbortown to pick up some reports at the Calverts office. When she left, she saw John Calvert arriving for the meeting.
It was apparent that Dennis Gerwing was going to ensure that he was at the office alone.
He sent her on a mission, then called her and said, don't come back to the office. We can take care of it in the morning.
But Shaha says the next day at work, March 4th, the morning passed without any sign of her boss. She says Gerwing finally showed up at around 1 in the afternoon, making no mention about why he was late. But he did ask her for one more favor, to pick him up at home the next morning and take him to the shop where his GMC was repaired. That next morning, Wednesday, March 5th, Shaha picked up Gerwing at his home. She noticed his Toyota Avalon was now back in his driveway. Cops can't figure out who drove it there.
The car was originally at the airport, but we don't have any evidence that anybody came into the airport to visit Dennis Gerwing. Well, nobody else was at his house.
As investigators mull over Shaha's story, they keep coming back to Gerwing and those 3 drop cloths.
These are commercial grade, 9-foot by 12-foot drop cloths that would certainly keep blood or any other hair or fiber evidence from getting in the vehicle if, let's say, the bodies were wrapped up in these drop cloths and they were secured.
By the end of March 10th, with so much circumstantial evidence now pointing to Dennis Gerwing, investigators are ready to publicly name him as a person of interest in the Calverts disappearance. The announcement will be made on the next day, March 11th, the same day a prayer vigil is planned for the Calverts. Coming up, an emotional gathering of the Calverts family and friends.
To see that vigil come together, I was crying pretty hard.
But then, shocking news.
It started unraveling at that point, like there's some serious stuff going on here.
March 11th, 2008. 8 days after Liz and John Calvert mysteriously vanished, family and friends are planning a candlelight vigil for later in the day. But this morning, the Beaufort County Sheriff has plans of his own to make an announcement about the last known person to see the Calverts, their former accountant, Dennis Gerwing.
We were doing a press release indicating that Dennis Gerwing was a person of interest.
How will Gerwing respond? The sheriff's about to find out. In the hours before the Calverts prayer vigil, Hilton Head Emergency Dispatch gets a 911 call from Dennis Gerwing's attorney. He's been trying to get in touch with his client since the day before, and Gerwing isn't answering.
Dennis was living in a townhome or a condo, if you will, because his home was being cleaned because we had done a thorough search with a search warrant of his home, and so he was staying in one of the units that he manages while that was being done.
Firefighters gain entry, and investigators are shocked by a grisly scene. Gerwing had locked himself in the bathroom of the master suite.
It was pretty violent. There was a lot of blood on the walls, on the floors, sinks and bathtub.
There was 360 degrees of blood in that bathroom.
In the tub, Dennis Gerwing's naked body lies lifeless, riddled with knife wounds.
Penetrating his thighs, his legs, his wrist, his neck, his throat.
As forensic technicians process the crime scene, darkness falls at Harbor Town, and a candlelight vigil honoring Liz and John Calvert is held.
It was under the Liberty Oak Tree, which is very special to John and Liz. Not only did they invest in it, personally, but John actually asked Liz to marry him here.
You know, to see that vigil come together, I was crying pretty hard, and I got a phone call at the vigil that, the former accountant had committed suicide. And that just doesn't, set up a good scenario for what really had happened to Liz and John.
Police ruled Dennis Gerwing's death as suicide, based on the weapon, a bloody steak knife found sitting next to Gerwing's right hand, a handwritten note next to the bathroom sink, and handwriting scrawled on a bedsheet in the adjoining bedroom.
Of course, your hopes are up that the notes are going to include something that's going to lead us in the right direction. But it gave us nothing. But it did tell us something that Dennis Gerwing knew that he was a person of interest. He was a suspect in John and Liz's missing. He never took an opportunity to say, I had nothing to do with, with the missing couple. He did, in fact, in the suicide note, claim that everything that happened at SPC.
SPC is Sea Pines Center, the office complex where the Calverts last met with Dennis Gerwing. Police searched the club group there again, for a third time, and still cannot find a speck of evidence or trace of blood. But another forensic investigation, and Gerwing's club group partner, do provide some answers.
Dennis Gerwing discussed with his partner the day before the suicide a forensic audit.
The audit is quite revealing. It shows that Gerwing embezzled about $2.1 million from his clients. He took over $200,000 from the Calverts alone, and Liz Calvert was apparently onto it.
Liz was very smart, and I think she'd started seeing some signs of this as much as 6 months prior, and she wasn't going to let it go.
An email Dennis Gerwing wrote to a friend spells out his feelings about Elizabeth Calvert.
They refer to her as a viper. They didn't get along, and she had discovered some financial issues with their accounts and made Dennis uncomfortable. I mean, he knew then that it wouldn't take long for her to figure out that there were some money issues here.
Elizabeth was tough. And she was on to Dennis Gerwing. She was on to Dennis Gerwing, and it scared Dennis Gerwing. I don't think there's any question about it. He knew that he would be going to prison.
Even if Gerwing were alive today, police still lack enough evidence to actually implicate him in Liz and John Calvert's disappearance. Analysis of that soil found on his kitchen floor fails to Braden Fuksa disappeared on Monday, July 15th, 2009. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. Braden Fuksa's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to him. Braden Fuksa vanishes in summer 2009.
It was just so out of character.
His parents panic when they discover a missing handgun.
My heart just sank.
And a puzzling trail of clues that he's left in his wake.
We didn't know if he hid north, south, east, or west.
Authorities discover that this young man has been guarding a dark secret.
Braden was pretty freaked out about having spent a night in jail.
And the search for him turns into a manhunt 700 miles away.
At this point, they would probably be looking for a body.
It's July 2009. 22-year-old Braden Fuksa is enjoying summer on his own. He's just moved out of his parents' house into an apartment in the college town of Lawrence, Kansas.
Braden was really dead set that he wanted to be out on his own. He had the opportunity to move in with an individual that he went to school with. They had found him an apartment, and they were going to move in together.
It was a big deal for me for him to leave home, but he wanted to be independent, which we encourage. I mean, you have to let him go at some point.
Braden still sees his parents often, visiting them at home in Olathe, just 20 miles east of Lawrence.
He'd come over to eat, and he'd come over to get leftovers. Todd likes to grill, and so that was Braden's big thing, was to grill, and he would come over and they would trade cooking secrets and recipes.
Braden also stops by regularly on his way to and from work. He's a security guard at a large outdoor retailer in Olathe, not far from his parents' house.
He said his dream job would be to work at Bass Pro so he could be around the fishing rods and the guns and everything.
When he's not at work, Braden spends almost all his time doing outdoor activities.
Braden, from the get-go, enjoyed the outdoors. We boated, we skied and tubed and wakeboard. Every free moment that we had, we were fishing. He was an outdoors person, 100%.
He's been camping since he can remember, since he was a toddler.
What is that? Did you catch him?
He loved to fish, and he loved to hunt.
Braden has an especially strong affinity for mountains, which was apparent on a family trip to Colorado in 2007.
He had more fun that week. He was constantly, oh, let's stop and do this, and let's stop. You know, we were hiking, and I mean, he was just beside himself.
In mid-July 2009, Braden's parents are out of town for a couple days. When they get back home Wednesday the 15th, Starla contacts Braden.
I text him because he knew we had been out of town and told him that we were home, we had made it okay.
Starla exchanges several texts with her son. She tells him that she and Todd have plans to see a film that night.
I told him I hated to cut our time short, but I had to go because the movie was going to start, and I'd talk to him later.
Starla and Todd spend the evening relaxing at the movies. But when they get home, they notice something odd.
Todd had gotten on the computer and was looking, and he said, Braden transferred some money.
It's not a big deal. It's usually one of the type of situations where Braden or a daughter would call and say, I'm short on money, I don't get paid till Friday, can you float me some money? And it happened all the time.
But this time, the amount that Braden has transferred is much higher than usual.
It was $800. Usually we're talking $300, $400. Just enough to pay his portion of the rent or insurance being due or something like that. I made a phone call to him and got his voicemail, left him a message just asking him what's up, and were you in trouble, and you got enough money.
Starla and Todd go to bed feeling curious, but not overly worried about the transfer. They figure their son will give them an explanation in the morning. But the next day, Braden doesn't call.
Thursday came around, still hadn't heard from him, and it wasn't like Braden. Starla and him were very close. They text back and forth daily.
Then, another day passes without word from Braden. His parents spend the rest of the week searching for him, making a routine of calling regularly and driving by his apartment and work to look for him.
We didn't know what was going on. We just bound and determined we were going to keep up the ritual of, going to his hangouts and try to find him.
Although Braden's parents are very worried, they don't call the police, wanting to respect their son's newfound independence. But they do reach out to his friends, including his ex-girlfriend, Elena Ryan. The young couple dated for almost 4 years, breaking up only a year and a half earlier.
I spoke with Starla and told her that I had seen Braden at a gas station in town. But it was a very brief interaction, just kind of a hi, how you doing sort of thing. He didn't seem overly eager to talk to me. And because he had been trying to pursue a reconciliation prior to that, that seems a little strange.
Elena's encounter with Braden is only hours before Starla's last text with her son on Wednesday, July 15th. His parents' concern grows.
I mean, you can imagine the worry. We were both a wreck.
It's been 4 full days since Starla and Todd have heard from their son. They're at a loss as to what to do next when they have a sudden suspicion.
For some reason, on Sunday morning, we got up and it was just one of those feelings.
In our master bedroom closet, there's a shelf in there.
We kept a 9mm in the closet for protection. Our granddaughter had been there 2 weeks before, and I had put it up high in the closet so that she could not get it. So I had just seen it the week before when I'd went and checked on it.
So I seen the gun case there up on the shelf, and I don't know why I did it, but I just grabbed a hold of the gun case itself. It was empty. And my heart just sank.
Only family members know where the gun is kept. Todd and Starla are sure that Braden has taken it.
The gun was gone. And we've become very nervous, and Todd said, we're gonna file a police report now.
The search for Braden takes on a new urgency. Where did he go? And why does he need a gun?
It's the worst feeling in the world. Our stomachs just dropped.
Coming up, Braden's parents are prevented from filing a missing persons report for their son.
Our emotions were extremely high at that point. We didn't know what else to do.
Todd and Starla Fuksa have not seen or heard from their 22-year-old son Braden in 4 days, despite repeatedly trying to contact him. But the alarms really go off when a handgun goes missing from their home.
The minute we discovered the gun was missing, we went straight to the police.
But at the Olathe Police Department, the Fuksas are not permitted to file a missing persons report for Braden because he is over 21 and no longer living at home.
Our problem was that he was an adult. He's still our child, but they don't see it that way.
They actually told us since he was living in Lawrence with a roommate, the roommate would need to be the one that submitted the report.
And it was kind of frustrating because our emotions were extremely high at that point. We didn't know what else to do.
Just in conversation, I mentioned that, well, he's got my pistol. That changed the whole subject. They automatically took our report and filed it.
Braden's parents give police a detailed description of their son, his vehicle, and the handgun. Detective Kenton Thompson is put on the case.
I reviewed the report that we had this missing 22-year-old man, and that he basically had just disappeared. We've got the handgun gone from his parents' house, so obviously now we've got this concern of what's that about.
As Detective Thompson begins his investigation, Braden's parents go home and wait. But they can't stop thinking about the gun.
You don't know if he was gonna hurt himself, if something went wrong and he was protecting himself, if something had happened to him and somebody was after him. You just don't know.
Braden's parents are confident that their son is an experienced gun user.
He's been using a gun since he was big enough to walk. He was hunting by the time he was 5.
But they also know that the gun that Braden took from their house is not meant for hunting.
A lot of police carry 9mm. It's more for target shooting, and it's more of a protection gun than anything.
Braden's former girlfriend Elena is mystified as well.
Braden had his own guns. He had his own handgun. I know he had one in Lawrence. Why would he take his dad's handgun instead of his own?
Looking for information, Braden's parents try calling the last people to have contact with their son.
Braden's cell phone was part of our account, so I had access to his records.
And we took like the last 20 numbers and he texts them.
You know, this is Braden's dad. Haven't seen Braden in a little while. Can you please call me?
At first, no one responds. But slowly, calls start coming in, including one from Braden's roommate.
He called, and him and I visited a little bit, and he did not know where Braden had gone.
But his roommate does know something else.
We found out that on Wednesday, Braden grabbed his bag and told his roommate that he was coming over to Olathe to spend the night with Todd and I, with his parents.
But Braden's parents were home on Wednesday night, and Braden never showed up.
To say that he was coming to our house was nothing big, and the roommate wouldn't have checked it out. We wouldn't have thought anything about it.
Given Braden's lie, his parents tried to pin down their son's actual movements.
We knew he had been at our house at some time because the gun was missing. We have the neighbors across the street, and we went over and asked them if they had seen Braden, and they said yes, they had seen him at the house that morning and said he was there about 15 minutes or so. He had pulled in, waved to him, you know, hollered hi, went into the house, and come back out and waved to him again and got in his car and left. So that was about 10:30, 10:40.
It was later that same day that Starla last texted with Braden. His cell phone bill indicates that Braden didn't call or text anyone else after that point.
I had talked to him at 2:30, so that kind of gave us a timeline of what he was doing.
As Braden's parents try to put all the pieces together, another clue surfaces. Todd receives a call from Megan Loach, who, unknown to his parents, is Braden's new girlfriend.
I met Braden at a party in Lawrence at the end of May 2009. Braden is really funny. He's the center of anything. Everybody who was at the party was there for Braden. Everybody knew Braden, and he made me laugh. I instantly liked Braden, and I think he instantly liked me.
Megan and Braden have only been dating for 2 months, but she feels close enough to him that she is disturbed by his behavior the last time they meet, the night before he disappears.
He spent the night at my house. We made dinner and we were hanging out. Braden was just really upset and just not his normal self. Braden's really outgoing and he's always making people laugh, and it was weird to see him just worried. He just looked worried.
The next morning, Wednesday, the day he disappears, Braden leaves abruptly.
I think it was about mid-morning. Braden got up and left, and he usually doesn't leave without saying goodbye or something, or he usually hangs around. And then I had heard a car start in the parking lot. So I looked out my window and he was pulling out. So I texted him and said no goodbye or not saying goodbye anymore or something. Braden just texted me back and said goodbye, Megan. That was it. That was the last time I had talked to him.
4 days later, no one, including his parents, has heard from Braden. And the next phone call sends the Fuksas even deeper down the rabbit hole.
Later that afternoon, we got a phone call from the police department. They had located his vehicle in Douglas, Wyoming area.
Coming up, Braden has been hiding a dark secret from his family.
We would never have suspected that something like this was going on, ever. It was almost like a Twilight Zone moment.
On July 15th, 2009, Braden Fuksa leaves his home in Lawrence, Kansas. His whereabouts are completely unknown by his friends and family. Then, 4 days later, police report that his vehicle has been found in Wyoming.
What is in Wyoming He knew no one in Wyoming, and why is he going that direction? What was causing him to go there? We were just a little dumbfounded, to be honest. There was a lot going through our minds.
Wyoming Highway Patrol found the vehicle as an abandoned vehicle. They did a check on it at 10:44 a.m. on Thursday, July 16th. There's no one around it. Now, at that point, Braden had not been reported missing, so they left because they had no other information available to them.
3 days later, on Sunday, July 19th, Braden's parents filed a missing persons report. It's only then that Braden's information is entered into the National Crime Information Center database and made available to authorities across the country.
We got what's called a delayed entry hit off of that tag, which told us that back on the 16th, that tag was run by the Wyoming Highway Patrol.
Braden's parents tell the police that as far as they are aware, their son doesn't know anyone in Wyoming, nor has he ever been there. The development in the case makes them very uneasy.
I mean, there's just so many missing pieces to this whole thing. The more information that kept coming up, the more confused we got, and it was just so out of character.
Looking for answers, Detective Thompson contacts many of the same people that Braden's parents have spoken to. He agrees that something seems very wrong.
I work a lot of juvenile cases, and typically the first people I talk to is their girlfriend or their boyfriend and their best friend. Those two people. If anyone's going to have information, you usually have some idea of what has happened. And in this case, his roommate was his best friend, and he has no information. And Megan was completely surprised by it also.
Braden's former longtime girlfriend, Elena, isn't surprised that he didn't confide in anyone.
From my perspective, Braden didn't have a lot of close friends. He was a sweet, sweet guy, but he was very quiet. I don't know if I would call him shy, but he was just very quiet and didn't put himself out there.
But Braden's new girlfriend has a differing account of his character.
Braden was a very outgoing person. I'm kind of shy, so Braden definitely had to be more outgoing to get me kind of out of my shell. It's weird hearing about someone that you were so close to in a situation that you never expected. It started to become more like I never really knew Braden.
As Detective Thompson struggles to get some insight into Braden's actions, a possible motive emerges. Braden is facing potential prison time on a theft charge.
The theft charge resulted from Braden stealing some cash from his employer. It was a felony level theft, which means in Kansas it was over $1,000.
Braden's parents were not told of their son's arrest when they filed the missing persons report. When police call to notify them, they're stunned.
We were very shocked. He'd never been in trouble ever. I don't know if he'd ever even had a speeding ticket. He was not that kind of kid.
Braden is a straight, go-forward kid. When he was in trouble, his mom usually knew about it. He would confess. So, just anything to happen like that was just, it didn't happen with Braden.
But as Braden's parents think back to their son's behavior, the recent transfer from their account, as well as some earlier events, they begin to recognize signs of his growing money problems.
Towards the midsummer time frame, Bass Pro had cut his department to a limited amount of hours, and it left him with 8 hours for the entire week.
Still, Braden manages to keep his true financial state under wraps.
Braden reinforced us that he had enough side jobs that he was getting by.
But in reality, Braden's financial troubles are quickly catching up with him.
His roommate told me in June, Braden was late getting his share of the rent to him. He didn't think a whole lot about that at the time. But then in July, he was late again, and like a week late.
As Braden's parents later learn, their son is so desperate for money that a week before he disappears, he dips into the till at work and gets caught.
Braden worked in security at Bass Pro. So his job was transferring money back and forth at closing time, putting stuff in the safe. The way we understand is they were closing up. Braden had taken money from the registers to the lockup spot. They confronted Braden when he come into work the next day. Braden said, yeah, it's back at my apartment. They brought in the police, talked to him a while, he confessed everything, and the police actually took him back to Lawrence to pick up the money. It's my understanding that he returned nearly all of the money. I don't think quite all of it, but nearly all of the money.
Despite his cooperation with the law, Braden is immediately taken into custody.
After that initial report was made, he was arrested. He was taken directly to the Johnson County Adult Detention Center.
Braden spends the night in jail. He is released the next day, but according to Braden's roommate, the harrowing experience of being locked up stays with him.
Braden was, quote, pretty freaked out about having spent a night in jail. Being arrested, for him was a pretty major life event and was distressing for him.
Braden was scared. I think when he got arrested, they had exaggerated how much trouble he was in, and I think that Braden he's never been in trouble before, and he was just really frightened by that. And he thought he was going to go to jail for, a couple of years.
Braden is due in court for a preliminary hearing on July 16th. But as the date approaches, Braden appears to set a plan in motion.
When he left his apartment on the 15th, he told his roommate, I'm going to go spend the night with my parents in Olathe, okay? That was Wednesday night. He had court the next day. Well, that is actually when he left.
When his case is called the next morning, Braden's car is already 2 states away, in Wyoming. Braden is nowhere to be found. All signs point to his being a fugitive from the law, but no one saw it coming.
We would never have suspected that something like this was going on, ever, because we've always had such an open relationship with our kids. It was almost like a Twilight Zone moment. It's like, what is this? I don't understand.
From his conversations with friends and family, Detective Thompson paints a portrait of what he believes to be Braden's last days in Kansas. A young man, ashamed of his crime and extremely afraid of getting a harsh sentence, panics and flees.
I believe his perception of it was that it was going to be much more serious for him than it probably would have been. This was the lowest level that would qualify as a felony theft. He didn't have any criminal history, so this would not have been a potentially serious sentence. It wasn't going to involve a prison term or anything like that. If he truly understood the likely outcome, perhaps he would not have been so distraught about the arrest.
Myself, my wife, the detective have all called and left voicemails on his phone saying that come back, hit your court date. This is not as bad as you think.
While there now seems to be strong motive for Braden's sudden bolt from Kansas, his exact whereabouts are still a mystery. Is Braden running from the law and carrying a handgun? Or has something much worse happened to him? Coming up, as more details come to light, investigators make a devastating discovery.
We only missed having some contact with
theft. Braden Fuksa flees his home state of Kansas. On the day he is due in court for a preliminary hearing, his car turns up 700 miles away in Wyoming. But Braden is nowhere to be found. As the details of Braden's case emerge, the investigation focuses on the largest piece of evidence, Braden's car.
When the Highway Patrol found the vehicle, Braden was not present.
And then we got a call that they had went ahead and opened it. Nothing looked suspicious in it whatsoever.
The Wyoming Highway Patrol tows the vehicle to Douglas, a small town just north of where it was found. Braden's parents make the long drive to pick it up themselves.
Star and I left early Friday morning and drove the entire route to Douglas.
I think the drive to get there was about 13 hours. It was a very long drive. You're very anxious because you're scared of what you're going to find once you get there. It was a very emotional trip.
As Braden's parents make their way to Douglas, they retrace the journey they believe their son made 10 days earlier.
From Cheyenne north to Douglas, the population is hardly any. You go through some very small towns along the way. The houses are far and few between. It's got the hills and very pretty country.
As they drive through the changing landscape, they look for physical cues that would indicate why Braden chose this direction.
We don't really understand why that area, even though it's absolutely beautiful. There were the plains there, it's just gorgeous, but that's not what he's always wanted. I mean, he's always wanted the mountains. So the area that we found the car, it just doesn't coincide with what we know that he wanted.
It's late at night by the time the Fuksas arrive in Douglas. The next morning, they go directly to the tow yard to pick up Braden's car.
This is something that's kind of bothered me. There was a key code on the door, a lock, and Braden always used that. He always stuck his keys under the floor mat. That was his habit, and I looked under the floor mat and the keys were there. That just, in my eyes, tells me he locked his vehicle and walked away.
As Starla and Todd continue to look through their son's belongings, the more convinced they are that Braden willingly left his car behind.
The clothes looked like he had went through the bag, kind of trying to sort out what he was going to take and what he wasn't going to take.
Because Braden has so recently moved out of his parents' home, Starla and Todd have a good idea of what items he might be carrying with him.
His cell phone was missing and he took his wallet. The boots were gone. There was a pair of jeans, so that tells me that he had one pair of jeans, the pair he was wearing, the boots, maybe a couple t-shirts, and the gun was missing.
But why Braden abandoned his car baffles detectives. Was he trying to throw off police, or did he leave his car by the side of the highway in the hopes that it would be found?
I quite honestly just cannot make sense of that. I don't know why he would abandon that vehicle that way where he did, because you certainly know it's going to be found. I mean, that's probably the easiest place to find a vehicle. You leave alongside the interstate, you know the highway patrol is going to come by and stop and check on it.
Upon their return to Kansas, the Fuksas hand over to the Olathe police several items they found in the car. One of them leads Detective Thompson to a key witness.
It was a receipt from a tire repair place out of Wheatland, Wyoming. That receipt indicated that he had purchased a used tire, and of course it had the company's name and phone number on it.
Detective Thompson calls the garage and is able to speak with the mechanic who saw Braden.
I was woke up from the guy that runs the pit stop Conoco that there was a fellow that came in and had a blown out tire.
Reuben Kaufman is a mechanic in Wheatland, Wyoming. He often gets calls for people who have broken down along Interstate 25. But that day, he would unknowingly help a fugitive.
I got the phone call around 5:30, 6 o'clock. His tire blew out at the Bordeaux exit, south of Wheatland, exit 67. They wanted me to run down there and put another tire on it and come back and pick him up and take him back down there.
Reuben drives down the interstate and finds Braden's car on the side of the road.
The tire had blown out. It was literally shreds. I mean, it looked like it blown out at high speed. There was no fixing it. It was just shredded.
Reuben replaces the blown-out tire, then returns to the pit stop to pick up Braden and bring him back to his car.
He seemed like a nice, clean-cut man. You know, very nice people person.
As the two men make small talk, Braden shares with Reuben information he has kept from everyone else.
I asked him where he was going. He said he was headed for the university in Billings.
Billings, Montana, is 400 miles directly north of Wheatland.
It made sense because that's the route you would take to go to Billings, is Interstate 25.
But according to Braden's parents, their son wasn't planning on going to school, nor does he know anyone in Montana. Nevertheless, they admit that their son has long been obsessed with the state.
Braden was infatuated with Montana, and Billings would have been where he wanted to go. He at one point had checked into finding out more about the game warden system in Montana. He wanted to be outdoors and in nature. That was his goal.
It was kind of an uncanny obsession, but he was real into John Wayne movies. And so I think he just saw Montana as scarcely populated, lots of nature. He could fish, he could hunt, he could do all the things that he loved. And that was the place to do it, I guess.
Slowly, a theory begins to take shape. Braden, running from the law, decides to disappear and start a new life in Montana. When Wyoming authorities examine the area, the theory gains strength.
From where the vehicle was found, along northbound I-25 south of Douglas, at some point on up the road is a truck stop.
You know, it was a very short walk to the rest stop. And with Braden's personality, he could walk up to somebody and strike a conversation in a heartbeat and wouldn't have a problem talking his way for a trip further up the road.
The search for Braden is now broadened to include Montana and beyond.
Well, we did contact the chief of the police department for the university there in Billings, and then we also contacted Billings, Montana City Police Department. We made a poster, we distributed it along that known route. In other words, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and even into Canada.
Detective Thompson is also able to create a more exact picture of Braden's flight out of Kansas.
My belief would be that he just drove through the night on the 15th. From kind of the time frame that Reuben has given me, he had the blown tire approximately 10 miles south of Wheatland. He got back on the road with the vehicle fixed somewhere around 8 o'clock, continued northbound on I-25.
Oddly, Braden then abandons the car less than an hour's drive north of where he got the flat. Shortly after that, the Wyoming Highway Patrol comes across the vehicle.
You know, the frustrating thing there is that, you know, we only missed having some contact with him by an hour or maybe an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half at the most, between when he left the vehicle and the time that Wyoming trooper stopped to check on it initially.
An hour earlier, and Braden might have been intercepted. Instead, his absence is going on 2 weeks. Disappointingly, the expanded search for Braden does not produce results.
Even though we tried to get information distributed as widely as we could, there was just no further leads and no contact.
Braden has been missing for 6 months. Suddenly, there's movement in the case.
I came in my office one morning and had a voicemail from a woman who works at the Salvation Army in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She told me she was 100% certain that she saw Braden.
Coming up, new hope that Braden is on his way home.
He said it was a long way back to Kansas.
After Braden Fuksa disappears from his home in Kansas, a missing person poster in Cheyenne, Wyoming generates an exciting tip. Linda Curl works at a Salvation Army soup kitchen, where she sees many down-and-out transients. She is certain that Braden was one of them.
We put bread out for the homeless or the low income or whoever needs it. And this particular day, we'd had a lot of bread, so we told them, take as many as you can use. it wouldn't fit in his pocket, so he was sticking it under his arms and trying to hold 3 or 4 loaves instead of just 1 or 2. And he said it was a long way back to Kansas, so he would take it.
It was kind of exciting to hear. If you had been in the Douglas area or on north past Douglas, you know, that would be your way back.
Convinced this could be more than coincidence, Detective Thompson contacts Braden's parents. The bread story strikes a chord.
My heart just dropped because Braden loved bread. He loves Italian. It was terrible because you try to make the bread and he was stealing it all the time. You know, I mean, he would eat it before we even had it toasted.
The news fills the Fuksas with fresh hope that Braden is on his way home. But just as quickly as the excitement builds, it begins to dissipate.
Cheyenne police looked at various places where some of their homeless people stay, and obviously watching the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army employees obviously are now very aware to be on the lookout for him. There was just no further sighting, no further indication that he was there.
Detective Thompson begins to doubt the sighting, as it's based solely on the poster.
She sees a missing person poster for Braden, and she says that is the guy that was in here last week and had lunch. But it can be very difficult for someone to make that identification. This person was in last week, and now I'm seeing the poster this week.
But Linda remains steadfast in her conviction that it was Braden whom she saw.
I was absolutely sure it was the same person that had been here because of his eyes and his smile. He didn't look wore out and tired like a lot of our people do. He had a very nice, bright smile, very pleasant, extremely polite. He didn't look like any of our regular people. He didn't look like a homeless person.
But the trail comes to a grinding halt in Cheyenne. In the coming weeks and then months, there are no more sightings of Braden. As time goes by, Braden's loved ones begin to consider a darker theory.
Initially, I wanted to think that he just needed to get out of town for a little while, gather his thoughts, and needed some space. But the more time that went by and no one had heard from him, I was worried he may have ended his life. My biggest fear is that he just couldn't cope with all of the stresses that he had and needed a way out, and that was his way out.
For Detective Thompson, the idea that Braden wanted to end his life is just one more theory that doesn't add up.
Still don't know what his main motivation was for fleeing. But if your objective is to harm yourself, you certainly don't have to drive 10 hours to do that.
"11 months have passed since Braden's disappearance. Frustrated by the lack of new clues in the case,